Bring in Evan Solomon, who's following it all, and let's talk about it here. Some big political shakeups going on here. Give us your perspective on what we're seeing playing out today.
Well, first of all, let's just have the moment. There's a lot of history in that moment. The first female finance minister, the very accomplished Chrystia Freeland, comes in again. Where the fire is hottest, they put her. When you want to renegotiate the NAFTA agreement with Donald Trump, you appoint Chrystia Freeland. When the provinces are up in arms over COVID and other matters, she's there to calm the waters after the last election, where the Liberals basically were wiped out in the West, parts of the West and the prairies. She's there to kind of bridge that gap, and here she is again. So that's pretty historic. Then you saw, the elbow bumps and the face masks and the social distancing. Again, another remarkable moment in history as we live through this pandemic, all of which points to the challenges for Chrystia Freeland. We're in a financial crisis. We're in a health crisis. She's got to deal with all of those. She's still got to figure out what to do with the aluminum tariffs that Donald Trump has just slapped on. So she's got a very full plate. Dominic LeBlanc moves over to do intergovernmental affairs. And interesting, you look back to 2015, Todd, when everyone was a fresh-faced new Liberal. These are all battle-hardened people now, and for both personal and professional reasons. There's Dominic LeBlanc, who's just battled cancer. Good to see his health back. He's going to go back. He's a very genial, well-respected guy, but he's got to now figure out how the provinces are going to climb out of their deficits and work closely with Chrystia Freeland. The Prime Minister, as you pointed out, is under an ethics investigation that will continue. The Governor General has been subjected to a myriad of stories about her performance and her reluctance to play that role. So you looked in that whole room and you thought, God, this was no longer sunny days. This was cloudy with a chance of scandal here and over everybody. But nonetheless, the government now, the thing to look for, now we got to look ahead. When will they prorogue? How long will they prorogue for? Will the committee, the finance committee with those 5,000 pages of documents on the We Charity, will they go public first? When will there be a speech from the throne? That's critical. It's a confidence motion. That's the first chance. There will be a new leader as of Sunday night for the Conservative Party. That's a chance for them to bring down the government. Will they wait for Chrystia Freeland to release her first budget? Also a confidence motion. That could happen as early as October. So what you've got now is post-Morneau, still the cloud of the We Charity, but you are on a totally different track in this minority government. The opposition is hungry. They've won a massive victory. They've taken down a finance minister. They're hungry. They see the Liberals as vulnerable. The Liberals have to reset. So the gun is off. The sprint now to that speech in the throne and the very survival of this government is now up for grabs, and they're going to have to try to figure out how to tell Canadians the story of 5 years of governing, not the story of 5 weeks of a scandal.
Why prorogue, Evan? What's your read on the strategy there?
Well, first, let's say it's a legitimate tactic to prorogue. Jean Chrétien prorogued 3 or 4 times, so did Stephen Harper. But there's always tactics, and you're exactly right. What it does politically is not just gives a chance to reset, but it stops those committees, like the Finance Committee, from investigating the We Charity. So it essentially dismantles that committee right there. That gives the Liberals politically a chance to kind of catch their breath, not have to deal with the drip, drip, drip. And gosh, we don't know what's in those 5,000 documents, pages of documents that are going to come out. Now, that committee will come back eventually, but it certainly stops those committees in a minority government because they're controlled by the opposition. And that's really an attempt for the Liberals to say, okay, we've lost our finance minister. In other words, we've lost the main engine. We've got to retool. We've got to figure out where we're going. We have to figure out our plan of recovery. We got to watch out for a second wave. And they're trying to give some runway for them to breathe because they know that they're about to go into a much more serious political battle than they've tested in the last 10 months since the last election, because the We Charity scandal has really reshaped the narrative. They're significantly more vulnerable than a usually vulnerable minority government. But they hope Chrystia Freeland can work her magic like she did with Doug Ford, who now basically calls her his best friend, or with Donald Trump, and kind of emerges from the fire saying, hey, we've done it. There's no guarantee of that, but certainly, as we saw today, they're putting an extraordinary amount of hope on Chrystia Freeland's back.
I got one last question for you. Bill Morneau, and he is appearing before the committee, and he says that he has written a check for $41,000 to repay the We Charity over trips that he and his family took, one to Africa, one to Latin America. Was the writing on the wall at that moment, in your mind, was that the end of Bill Morneau's political career?
Yeah, I think he probably thought he was writing a check, but he was probably writing on the wall, as you say, and that's what it was doing. That was the tipping point. There's just no question. I know the Liberals will spin a narrative that, look, he really wanted to be the Secretary General of the OECD, this international organization that I'd give you $1,000 if you could ask any member of the public who knew is the current Secretary General. These are obscure names for most Canadians. Look, let's be clear. 10 months after an election, you don't ditch the job in the midst of a pandemic and a health crisis after 5 years and tell your constituents in the country, I only wanted to serve another 10 months anyway. I'm not ready to go on. I want to do this other job at the OECD when you're the finance minister. You just don't do that. No one really buys that. It was clear that the leaks, the idea that the prime minister wanted to make a change, and then that $41,000 payback, as you rightly point out, that is what we in our company would call the TSN turning point of his career. Now, his legacy is up for grabs, and we'll find out if it's scandal, if it's deficits, as the Conservatives will say, or if it's, the child benefit program, healthcare, CPP, as the Liberals will say. So there's a lot of politicking to be done, but I guarantee you this, it's not the way Morneau wanted to go. It's not the way Trudeau wanted Morneau to go. And there's no way to paper this over. There's no way to spin this. It is a very consequential sign of disarray. And the Liberals are looking to Chrystia Freeland to say, hey, can someone put Humpty Dumpty back together again? And as you saw there, she took off her mask, she took the oath, and she's got to put the pieces back together.
Evan Solomon in Ottawa, thanks for this. Great as always.